I still thought I was the most important person in my husband's eyes, until one day I accidentally discovered that he had deleted every single photo and video of me from his Instagram, while photos of a young woman were regularly appearing on that account. When I asked why, he calmly replied, "You do not fit my aesthetic." I nodded and said, "Perfect." That night, I found out her real identity, and I also removed his access to my bank account. The next morning, he called me, yelling when his card got declined at a restaurant. I didn't say a word. I quietly sent him an embarrassing video from years ago of that girl. It made him freeze, stumble back 2 steps in shock. But before I tell you what was in that video that shook him so badly, please hit the like button and comment the city you're living in. I'll tell you right now. I am Brooklyn Linwood, 35 years old, a dentist working at Boston General Dental Center. My husband, Nathan, 4 years younger than me, is a freelance content creator who lives almost entirely off social media imagery and the aesthetics he's always talking about. I met Nathan for the first time 6 years ago at a content creation workshop I attended with a friend. I remember so clearly the way he smiled. Natural, easygoing, a little lazy, but somehow very sincere. Just a year later, we were married. I had always believed I chose a man who was genuine, funny, and capable of love. Even though for the 5 years we were married, I was the one carrying most of the financial weight. Mortgage payments, electricity bills, all of it. But maybe I was wrong. A week ago, on Monday, Nathan packed his suitcase and flew to Hawaii for a 7-day work trip. The first night he was gone, the apartment became strangely cold. I couldn't sleep, kept turning over and over. Around 1 a.m., maybe 1:30, I finally reached for my phone to check my husband's Instagram, just to feel a little closer to him. But as soon as his profile loaded, my heart felt like it stopped. Every photo that had me in it, our wedding, Thanksgiving, trips, anniversary dinners, they were all gone. Not a trace left. As if I had never existed in his life. In their place were photos of a young woman, toned body, edgy style, a fitness influencer I had never seen before. My hands shook so much I nearly dropped the phone. I called Nathan immediately. He picked up within seconds, sounding casual, like we were discussing business. When I asked, "Why did you delete my photos?" Nathan replied flatly, "Because you don't match my aesthetic." A sentence like a cold blade. Yet I tried to stay calm and asked again, "So who is she?" And Nathan answered without even a moment's hesitation, "That's Jennifer, a fitness influencer. You know I'm working on a project with her, Equinox Center. She fits my aesthetic." I sat there frozen. He spoke about his wife and another woman like he was choosing colors for a poster. No emotion, no hesitation. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't beg. I just said 2 words. Perfect. Then I hung up. The apartment was so dark and silent, I could hear my own heartbeat. I reopened his Instagram, took screenshots of every photo, every story, every caption, as if I needed evidence for something I myself didn't yet understand. That night, I realized a painful truth. He didn't just delete pictures. He deleted me, erased my existence from his public life, swiftly, neatly, without a trace of regret, like someone deleting a photo that didn't match the color of their feed. Right the moment I put my phone down, the dark apartment felt like it was swallowing me whole, and I began to remember every small detail I had once tried to ignore. Turns out it didn't start tonight. The cracks had begun 3 months ago. It's just that I, as a wife, had patched them up myself so our marriage could look fine for a little longer. I remember the first month Nathan switched to being a full-time content creator. That's when he began withdrawing more money from our joint account than usual. The first time, he said it was to upgrade audio equipment. I believed him. The second time, he wanted a new camera to improve video quality. I believed him again. Each time he withdrew $300, $400, then $600. He always had a professional-sounding reason, always convincing. I was busy at the clinic, busy with treatments, with meetings, and I had no reason not to believe my husband. I recall one rare time I checked the joint account. Exactly 3 months ago, I asked, "Why did you withdraw so much this month? Are you working on a special project?" Nathan smiled, wrapped his arm around my shoulder, and said in that half-joking tone, "Don't worry, I'm investing in our future." Back then, something about it felt slightly off, like the prick of a needle against my skin, but I told myself I was just being too sensitive. I remember another night, when I got home from a shift and walked into the kitchen to find Nathan sitting on a chair, scrolling on his phone with an unusually excited look on his face. When I asked what he was watching, he quickly closed the screen and said, "Nothing, just researching TikTok trends." But moments later, the screen lit up again, reflecting the image of a woman working out at a gym. I asked, "Who was that just now?" And he said, "An online PT I follow, to learn how to structure content." I believed him. Or rather, I forced myself to believe him. Then I remember the small expenses I once thought were insignificant. An $85 bill from The Protein House, a $140 charge at Beacon Cinema, a $210 invoice from Seaport Luxury Suites, all neatly filed under work expenses that Nathan said were tax-deductible. At the time, I found them a little odd, but I was always busy and always wanted to think the best of my husband. Now everything clicks into place, each piece sliding into its rightful position. I sat on the sofa, turned on the kitchen light. The warm yellow glow cast itself onto the blank wall in front of me. During those 3 months, it's not that I didn't suspect. I did. I felt it. But every time my intuition tried to speak, I'd silence it with one thought. He's my husband. I have to trust him. Trust, until tonight. I set my phone down on the table, opened the American Express banking app, entered the password, and accessed our joint fund account. On the screen was the shared account that, for the past 5 years, I had almost single-handedly built with overtime hours at the hospital, wisdom tooth extractions that stretched until 7 p.m., and sudden on-call shifts when colleagues needed time off. I scrolled down to Authorized User Nathan Cole, took a deep breath, and dragged the spending limit down to exactly $99 per day. A number so small that even HMO cardholders weren't restricted that tightly. I didn't text Nathan. I didn't give notice. I didn't explain. I simply tapped save, heard the cold ping sound, and closed the phone. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital at 7:45, earlier than usual. I turned on the clinic lights, neatly arranged the instrument trays, hung my white coat on the hook, but my hands were still trembling slightly. I had barely slept the night before. While waiting for my first patient, I opened my laptop and searched for a name I'd once heard from a former colleague, Ezekiel Moore, a private investigator specializing in infidelity and personal financial fraud cases. I sent the email at 8:12 a.m. At 8:40, while I was examining my first patient of the day, my Apple Watch vibrated. An email reply. "May I call you within 10 minutes?" Exactly 10 minutes later, just as I finished a filling procedure and stepped into the break room for a sip of water, my phone rang. Ezekiel's voice was low, steady, the kind that belonged to someone who had witnessed the collapse of countless marriages and still retained composure. "I want to verify my husband's relationship with a girl on Instagram," I said quietly, turning my back toward the staff room's glass door so no one could hear. Ezekiel replied, "I understand. Can you meet me this afternoon? My office is on Boylston Street, as soon as possible." The morning passed with 4 more appointments, but my mind was elsewhere. I worked like a machine. Medical history, anesthesia, treatment, prescriptions. Yet whenever there was even a second of pause, the image of Nathan and that girl returned like a thin fog clouding my brain. At exactly 2:30 p.m., I asked to leave early. I told the department head I needed to handle a family matter. She looked at me for a long moment, the look of an experienced woman, then nodded without asking anything further. At 3 p.m., I stepped into Ezekiel's office. It was an old building, frosted glass doors, a nameplate deliberately small, as if meant to avoid attention. Private Investigator, E. Moore. Inside, it smelled of aged wood, warm yellow light, and a desk crowded with files sorted by year. Ezekiel sat behind the desk, his gaze observant but never judgmental. "I need to know," I said, placing my phone on the desk and opening the photo of the fitness influencer, "what my husband and she are to each other." Ezekiel nodded and wrote a few lines. "So your initial objective is relationship verification? Or do you want deeper information, finances, schedules, level of intimacy?" I looked at my fingers, trembling slightly with anger, with shame, with pain. "Find everything for me. Everything he's hiding from me." Ezekiel nodded again, slower this time, firmer. On the notepad, there was only one line. "Full investigation. Priority." When I left Ezekiel's office, the clock read 3:28 p.m. Boston was as noisy as ever, while I drove in silence, no music, no horn, driving by habit back toward my home. The next day, I treated more than 20 patients, performed several minor procedures, adjusted a treatment plan for a boy so terrified of dentists that he cried every time he saw the drill. I completed everything on professional reflex alone, while my mind constantly drifted back to the image of Nathan and the young woman on Instagram. At 11 a.m. on Thursday, as I was preparing to enter a wisdom tooth extraction, my Apple Watch vibrated. A new email. Sender, Ezekiel Moore. The subject line contained only 3 words. Investigation report. I had to stay calm to finish the procedure. My hands couldn't tremble while holding surgical forceps. Once it was done, exactly at lunch break, I locked the clinic door, washed my hands thoroughly, then sat down at the desk like a student about to receive the most important exam result of their life. I opened the email. The first sensation was cold spreading from my hands up my arms, then sinking into my chest like a block of ice placed inside my body. The report stated clearly, 3 months ago, Nathan met Jennifer for the first time at an Equinox gym while filming a review video. Ezekiel had footage from hallway cameras, building security cameras, showing them talking for nearly an hour, beginning with a question about which camera angle looks better. The report also noted that 10 weeks ago, they began frequent personal communication. Ezekiel did not obtain message content, as that would be illegal, but he collected call logs and communication timestamps from publicly accessible carrier data. A legal form of investigation when the client authorizes monitoring of a phone number they personally pay for. The volume of calls and video calls spiked sharply, especially during lunch hours. 2 months ago, Ezekiel documented their presence at Boston Seaport at the same time. There were photos of them entering a movie theater and ticket verification images matching the same time. A week later, they checked into a boutique hotel in Back Bay. Ezekiel attached the payment receipt. Nathan had used the supplementary card from my joint fund account to pay. I paused, pressed a hand to my chest, short of breath, as if I'd just run up 3 flights of stairs. The report continued. Over 2 months, they dined out 8 times at different restaurants, watched movies 3 times, and entered hotels 5 times. Ezekiel had photos each time they entered together, not private moments, but images of them appearing in lobbies and entrances, public locations legally permissible for surveillance. 1 month ago, Nathan purchased a luxury leather handbag as a gift for Jennifer. The payment came directly from the joint fund, specifically from the amount I had transferred at the end of the month to prepare for medical insurance payments. The final line of the report made me want to drop the phone immediately. Jennifer currently believes Nathan is financially independent. She introduces him to friends as a successful man who does not rely on family support. I laughed. A choked laugh. A laugh so painful it burned the bridge of my nose. Financially independent. With whose money? Mine. The money I earned through every treatment session, every on-call hour, every backache from standing too long beside the dental chair. I sat alone in the clinic for a long time, the white ceiling light shining straight down, illuminating every tiny tremor in my hands. What I feared most was no longer the answer. The truth lay exposed so clearly that I could no longer justify, soothe, or deceive myself. I knew. This was only the beginning. Just as my intuition had warned me, the final section of Ezekiel's report made my stomach tighten in waves. Right beneath the line stating that Jennifer believes Nathan is financially independent, there was an attached file titled HNL Trip Evidence. I opened it with one hand, the other unconsciously pressing against the table to steady myself. Inside the folder was the entirety of Nathan's Hawaii itinerary. The very trip he had claimed was a one-week business trip for a sports brand collaboration. Ezekiel's first line was painfully clear. This was not a business trip. This was a 7-day vacation with Jennifer. My heart felt like it dropped into an empty pit. The next PDF was a copy of the flight tickets. 2 tickets. Same date, same flight, same boarding time. Nathan booked under his legal name, while Jennifer used her TikTok registered name, but the passport still read Jennifer Louise Parker. I zoomed in on the booking code. I checked again, hoping desperately it was just a coincidence. But no. Everything matched down to every digit. I opened the photo files next. They were standing at Logan Airport, exactly 1 meter apart. Not posing together, but Ezekiel kept enough distance not to alert them, close enough to know they were traveling together. In the next image, they were at the Hawaiian Airlines check-in counter. Then another photo near gate 32. Jennifer tilting her head as she laughed, while Nathan turned slightly sideways, saying something that made her burst into laughter. I remembered what Nathan told me the night before he left. I'm really worried. This business trip is important. I don't want to mess up this opportunity. Looking back now, that was true, except the person he was worried about wasn't me, it was her. I opened the accommodation section next. Invoices from the Moana Surfrider Resort, a luxurious beachfront hotel I had once dreamed of visiting on our honeymoon, but Nathan said back then he wasn't financially qualified. How ridiculous. The resort invoice clearly displayed 7 nights, 2 guests, ocean view room, nightly room service, couples spa on day 3, set menu seafood dinners, all paid using the American Express supplementary card, the card directly linked to my joint fund account. I touched the transaction ID as if it were a wound I needed to press to be certain it was real. There was a small note from Ezekiel. During the first 3 days, Nathan booked 5 consecutive couples spa services, all paid with joint funds. I closed my eyes. On the evenings I worked overtime at the hospital, icing my aching shoulders after difficult extractions. I should have been there, not a young stranger enjoying herself with the money I earned through my labor. I flipped to the final image file. A distant shot, Nathan and Jennifer standing on Waikiki Beach, the sunset spilling behind them. Nathan was holding his phone, taking photos of Jennifer. She leaned slightly, hair wet from swimming, smiling brightly as if she had never known anyone's pain but her own. And I, the woman who had trusted him completely, was on the other side of the world, eating instant ramen after work exhaustion, believing my husband was having a long, difficult work day. I placed the phone on the table, my hands clenched tight. This was no longer just an affair. This was cruelty, carefully planned, financed with my money, and concealed beneath words so sweet they were fake. I took a deep breath, and I knew, more clearly than ever, I didn't just want the truth. I wanted everything that belonged to me back. That thought hadn't even cooled when my phone vibrated again. A new email had just arrived. Sender, Ezekiel Moore. Subject, background, Jennifer Parker. I opened the email, half hoping it would be nothing more than basic information. Birthplace, occupation, public records. But as I scrolled down, I realized what I was reading was not an ordinary background check. It felt like a dark dossier someone had spent an entire youth trying to hide, and Ezekiel was pulling back each curtain, with the cold precision of truth. Jennifer Parker, 28 years old, born and raised in Long Island, suburban New York. The first line was so ordinary, I thought everything would be simple. But the second line sent a chill down my spine. A professional gold digger. Sexual financial relationship history with multiple wealthy men. I sat up straight and kept scrolling. According to Ezekiel's findings, when Jennifer was 18, she had a pretty face, an attractive body, and the recklessness of someone who didn't know where moral boundaries lay. She entered into a relationship with her own stepfather, a bank executive. The relationship lasted nearly 2 years, concealed beneath extra tutoring, part-time work, and late-night gym sessions. My heart tightened in disgust as I read. I had encountered many kinds of people in my life. Kind patients, decent colleagues, people carrying deep personal sorrow, but someone who willingly dragged themselves into such darkness, I had never seen. Ezekiel added, Jennifer's biological mother caught them in the bathroom after returning early from a business trip. I stopped. I could picture the scene, steam filling the room, the door opening, raw betrayal striking straight into a mother's eyes. Ezekiel described it briefly, but vividly enough. Afterward, Jennifer's mother kicked her out of the house. Divorce finalized within the month. Jennifer drifted for several weeks, then moved to Manhattan and secured a job at a luxury jewelry store. She had beauty, a body, and the ability to flatter men in power, and within 6 months, she seduced her manager, a man in his 60s, married, wealthy, and fond of young women who knew how to please. The relationship lasted 18 months before everything inevitably collapsed. Ezekiel's attached files included a video taken from the manager's wife's phone. Shaky, loud, but unmistakably clear. The wife storming into a hotel room, climbing onto the bed and slapping Jennifer repeatedly, while Jennifer barely managed to grab a towel to cover herself. I had to stop for a few seconds. My heart pounded with rage, with revulsion, and with pity for myself. Ezekiel noted, after the incident, Jennifer disappeared from New York for nearly 8 months. Reality, traveled to Thailand for full facial cosmetic surgery. I unconsciously touched my lower lip. Full facial reconstruction. I immediately understood why I hadn't recognized her when I saw the photos on my husband's Instagram. She had changed her appearance like putting on a new mask. A year later, Jennifer resurfaced in Boston, with no past, no real name appearing in any public record. She joined a well-known fitness brand, opened TikTok, opened Instagram, and built the image of a self-made, hardworking, inspirational woman. 1.5 million followers. They saw her effort, but they didn't know. She was only trying to climb through the lives of wealthy men. I scrolled to the final line of the email. Ezekiel wrote, at this point, the affair is undeniable. But more importantly, Nathan is merely the next victim on her list. I set the phone down, taking a few seconds to feel my own breathing. As a doctor, I had always believed in recovery, in healing. But looking at this file, I realized there are people who don't want to be saved. They only want to keep destroying others in order to exist. And I, someone who had worked her entire life to build a decent existence, had been dragged into the filthy game of 2 people who lived by deception. But not anymore. From this moment on, I knew I would fight with every ounce of clarity I had left. That clarity was precisely what Nathan never believed I could retain after months of being manipulated by his vague explanations. I sat still in the clinic, staring at the white light reflecting off the cold steel tabletop. The faint smell of anesthetic lingered in the air. Part of me was still a doctor, someone trained to relieve pain, to reassure others that everything would be okay. But another part, the part that had just been betrayed, the part that had just faced the naked truth, was rising. That evening, when I returned home, Boston felt colder than usual. I hung my coat on the rack, washed my hands under hot water until numbness crept into my fingertips. Then I sat at the dining table, where Nathan and I once shared warm meals, and opened my laptop. I accessed the banking interface. My name, the joint fund account. Every recent transaction still visible, as if mocking me. I scrolled to Authorized Users. Nathan's name lit up on the screen, with full access to the account I had built over years of hospital work. I didn't hesitate. No second thoughts. No need to keep the peace. I clicked Remove Access. A notification appeared. Are you sure you want to remove this user's access? I pressed Yes without blinking. 1 second later, the system confirmed. Access removed. I leaned back in the chair, head tilted back. Not relief, but the sensation of reclaiming land that had been stolen from me. I picked up my phone and sent Nathan exactly one message. A perfect irony for the man who once treated me like an off-color photo. Now, you don't fit my financial aesthetic. Seconds later, his reply popped up, so fast I could picture his genuine panic, barely hidden beneath his familiar tone. I don't like jokes like this. I looked at the words and laughed quietly. For the first time, I felt like I had control. Not him, not Jennifer, not any so-called aesthetic. I placed the phone back on the table, a thin smile on my lips. If he thought I was joking, he was about to witness the most serious chapter of his life. I turned off the living room lights and walked into the bedroom, but I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. The transactions, the hotel bills, Jennifer's face in the photos, Nathan's indifferent expression when he said, "You don't fit my aesthetic." The final thread of endurance in me snapped. I knew I couldn't wait another day to change my life. The next morning, I sent an email requesting 2 days off. I didn't write anything long, just this. I have an urgent family matter. I'll be back the day after tomorrow. The department head replied in less than a minute. Brooklyn, take the time off. We'll cover the patients. I read that and my eyes stung. Turns out the one place I always had to be strong was the only place I was truly allowed to be weak. I put on a coat, tied my hair back, and drove to the office of attorney Claire Whitman, the same lawyer my colleague Ivy had once hired to divorce her cheating CEO husband. Ivy had said one sentence when recommending Claire. If you want to win in silence, go to Claire. Claire's office was on the 14th floor of a tall glass building in downtown Boston. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped into a space that was bright, tidy, elegant, without being ostentatious. A receptionist smiled at me. Are you Brooklyn? Attorney Claire is expecting you. Claire Whitman stood as I entered. She looked to be in her early 50s, petite, with straight black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. The kind of woman who had witnessed the collapse of many marriages and yet still held on to compassion. Brooklyn, have a seat. Ivy told me a little, but I want to hear it from you. I set down my bag and opened the folder of photos, receipts, and bank statements I'd prepared. I told her everything, from the night Nathan deleted our photos, to Ezekiel's emails, to the Hawaii invoices paid with money I earned. Claire didn't interrupt. She took notes quickly, clearly, methodically, not missing a single detail. When I finished, she closed her notebook and leaned back in her chair. Brooklyn, I'll be blunt. You're holding all the cards. I held my breath. Claire continued. First, the home you're living in was purchased before the marriage, so it's fully your private asset. Nathan has no legal claim. Second, all the infidelity evidence comes from legal sources, photos taken in public places, restaurant security cameras, receipts tied to your account. The court will accept it. Third, Claire looked at me, her voice dropping. You've contributed 90% of the finances throughout 3 years of marriage. That places you in a highly advantageous position in asset division. Nathan has virtually no leverage. I was silent, feeling as if someone had just lifted a heavy curtain from my shoulders. Claire tilted her head and spoke clearly. Brooklyn, you're not walking away from this marriage empty-handed. But I'm afraid Nathan might be. I looked out the window, where morning traffic moved steadily through the streets of Boston as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening. But for me, this morning marked the moment I reclaimed myself. A doctor, a grown woman, someone who no longer accepted being dismissed. "Are you ready?" Claire asked. I nodded, more ready than ever. I said those words to Claire, then left her office with a strange feeling. Not relief, not pain, but a cold, lucid clarity I had never touched before. That night, I slept deeply. No dreams, no startles, no confusion. For the first time in weeks, I didn't check Nathan's Instagram, didn't scrutinize Jennifer's photos, didn't review Hawaii invoices. I simply let my body rest, like a doctor who knows she needs to recover before a difficult surgery. But that peace lasted only until 7:12 the next morning. My phone buzzed nonstop. Nathan was calling. First time, second, third. I didn't answer. On the fourth call, I swiped to pick up, not because I cared, but because I wanted to hear what role he'd perform next. Nathan screamed as soon as the line connected. "Brooklyn, my card was declined. What the hell did you do?" I looked out the kitchen window. Boston was sunny this morning, while his voice cracked in panic. I rested one hand on the white stone countertop, slowly turning my coffee mug. "Where are you?" I asked calmly. "At a restaurant. I was having breakfast with—" He paused for a second, then changed tone. "A client, and the card was declined right in front of them. Do you understand? They looked at me like I was some broke loser." I closed my eyes. I didn't need to imagine who that client was. Jennifer. She was definitely sitting there in tight gym clothes, high ponytail, wide-eyed, while Nathan's polished image shattered in front of her. "Why is my card locked?" Nathan yelled, as if I owed him an explanation. I took a sip of coffee. "You were removed from the account last night," I said softly. "You can't use my money anymore." There were 3 seconds of dead silence. Then he shouted, "Are you crazy? I have contracts, projects. I need that money to—" I cut in. "You need money? Then go spend your aesthetic." And I hung up. I didn't need to hear another word. Over the next 24 hours, I received a total of 19 messages and 7 missed calls from both unknown and familiar numbers. All for the same purpose. Nathan was borrowing money from everyone, from his gym buddies, from an acquaintance who's a photographer, and, most humiliatingly, from my cousin Nolan, whom Nathan had once dismissed as not in our league. Nolan texted me at 4:51 p.m. "Brooklyn, Nathan asked to borrow $300 from me. But something feels off. Are you okay?" I read it, unsure whether to laugh or feel sorry for myself. I simply replied, "Don't lend him anything. Everything will be clear soon." But Nathan didn't stop. His last message of the day read, "Brooklyn, you can't do this to me. I need the money urgently. You're destroying my career." I set my phone down, staring at the line of trees along Tremont Street, casting long shadows on the pavement. Today, for the first time, I felt like I was no longer just reacting to the damage. I was standing in the eye of the storm, and I wasn't trembling. The next morning, after waking up, I looked out the kitchen window and saw Boston sunlight piercing through the trees out front. It had been a week since Nathan left for Hawaii, a week since I learned the whole truth, a week since I shut off his financial access. And that week was enough to turn a self-assured man who lived on curated social media images into someone completely unmoored. At 9 a.m., I received a single message from Nathan's number. "Brooklyn, I'm on my way back." No greeting, no apology, just a statement, as if he were returning to claim some reward. I stood up, completely unfazed. 2 hours earlier, at 7 a.m., I had already called a moving service the hospital had used for dental equipment transfers. The man on the phone asked, "Is it large furniture?" I replied, "No, just 17 boxes of clothes, shoes, electronics, and personal items." At exactly 8:20 a.m., a white truck stopped in front of the house. 3 workers got out, gloved up, and began carrying each box. I stood at the door, arms crossed, watching them work with the precision of a surgical team. This was, after all, a kind of liberation surgery. Nathan's name was labeled on every box, but there was no delivery address. Only the line, "Pickup only." They arranged all 17 boxes in 2 neat rows at the front gate, where any neighbor could easily see them. And I wanted that. Not to shame him, but to let the truth show as plainly as it deserved to. 11:06 a.m. I saw an Uber pull up in front of the house. Nathan stepped out. It took me a few seconds to recognize my own husband. His hair was a mess, beard scruffy, t-shirt wrinkled, jeans dusty, like someone who had been living off fast food, cheap motels, or airport chairs for days. He saw the boxes at the gate and froze, as if hit in the head. "Brooklyn, what is this?" His voice hoarse and shaky, the usual confidence gone. I opened the door and stepped out, as calm as I could be. "I'm just reorganizing my living space." He walked up to the boxes, touching the labels as if he couldn't believe it. "You're joking, right?" I checked my watch. "You have 30 minutes to leave before I call property management to clear it all to the dump." Nathan's face shifted from shock to fury. "You can't do this. This is my home, too." "No," I replied. "I bought this house before we got married, and my lawyer confirmed it." He stepped closer, trying to look tough. "I'll sue you. I won't let you destroy my life." That's when I smiled. Not out of joy, but because I'd heard too many empty threats this past week. "Go ahead," I said evenly. "Claire Whitman, my attorney, has been ready since yesterday." That sentence completely deflated him. Like a balloon losing air, Nathan stepped back. He looked at the boxes, then at me, then down, as if trying to find a line to plead with, but said nothing. I stood there, arms crossed, not flinching under his gaze. For the first time, I wasn't the one explaining, or apologizing, or trying to understand. I was just the one ending it. Nathan picked up the first box, but then stopped as if remembering something, set it back down, and walked directly toward me. This time, no longer dazed. He squared his shoulders, restoring the offended man persona. "Brooklyn, what's wrong with you? Are you insane?" His voice sharp. "You kick your husband out, block the accounts, make up stories. When did you become like this?" "Since you cheated," I answered calmly. Nathan scoffed, his arrogance flaring, typical of a man cornered and now flipping the blame. "Don't make things up. I didn't cheat. It's normal to eat breakfast or go to the gym with a work partner. You're blind with jealousy." I leaned slightly against the doorframe, arms folded. "Is that so? Would you like me to show the evidence?" Nathan froze, his eyes flickering like someone about to be exposed. I continued, my voice low but clear. "Photos of you and Jennifer at Boston Seaport. Hotel bills from Back Bay. The $2,200 purse you bought her. Photos of you two in Hawaii. Your plane tickets. Couples spa at Moana Surfrida Resort. All paid with my money." Nathan recoiled half a step. No way. Someone's feeding you lies." I cut in. "Ezekiel Moore, private investigator. Specializes in cheating influencers. He tracked Jennifer in New York 3 years ago." Nathan's face lost all color. I took one step forward, my voice sinking. "And you know what's the saddest part?" Nathan didn't answer, just stood there, speechless. I said it plainly. "Jennifer doesn't want you. She wants money. You're just a walking wallet, a replacement fund after she drained the last few men." Nathan's eyes widened, like I just slapped him in front of the whole neighborhood. I went on, each word dropping like a stone. "You think she loves you? Nathan, she doesn't even know how much money you make. All she knows is the money you took from my account." His voice cracked. "Brooklyn, what nonsense is this? I have video," I said clearly. "A video of her being caught in a hotel by the manager's wife. A video of her fleeing to Thailand after the scandal. A video of her changing her face, her identity, and coming back to the U.S. to con her next mark. Nathan stood frozen. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I lowered my hand and pointed to the 17 boxes by the gate. You thought you were the exception? No, Nathan, you're just a small name on her long list. Nathan's face turned pale. His eyes reddened. I delivered the final line, decisive, cold. What's left of you is right there. You have 25 minutes. And I walked back inside. The door closed softly, but the sound behind me rang like a sentence. The door that closed behind me that day felt like it sealed away everything that had ever tied me to Nathan. But life doesn't pause at moments of climax. It continues, quietly, slowly, and with a realism that demands to be faced. In the months leading up to the court date, I returned to my life as a real dentist. Checkups, long treatment sessions, elderly patients bringing me homemade cookies after their routine visits. Children terrified of the drill, grinning widely when I handed them whale-shaped stickers. I realized I had forgotten this feeling, forgotten how good it was. And Nathan? I heard bits and pieces, not because I was looking, but because people casually mentioned it, that he was living in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Boston, the kind where the bed creaks with every turn and the air conditioner wheezes like it's gasping for breath. He lost his contracts, lost his income from Instagram, lost the entire, successful man persona he had spent years curating. Jennifer? She fought with Nathan after they got back from Hawaii, when he no longer had enough money to take her shopping or dine at fancy restaurants. Then she cut off contact. No calls, no texts. I guess. When the money stopped, everything else did too. And me, ironically. I experienced the most beautiful turning point in my career. While Nathan was scraping by, I was called into a large conference room by the hospital director one late afternoon. She said, "Brooklyn, you've contributed to this hospital for years. You deserve the position of department head." And I was promoted, a title I once thought would take me several more years to reach. My colleagues hugged me, congratulated me, some even cried with me, because they knew I had come through a marriage that couldn't be saved. During those 6 months, I relearned how to live alone, how to eat dinner in silence without feeling lonely, how to sleep without checking someone's messages, how to drive without the weight in my chest. Exactly 6 months after I filed for divorce, the court hearing took place. I walked in wearing a white blazer, hair neatly tied, no elaborate jewelry. Claire, my lawyer, walked beside me, holding the thick folder we had prepared for weeks. Nathan sat at the other table, wrinkled shirt, exhausted face and eyes. No longer arrogant, no longer angry, just hollow. When the judge asked for statements, Claire stood. Her voice was calm, but as sharp as a surgical blade. "Your Honor, my client was subjected to long-term infidelity by her husband. All expenses for the defendant's activities with the other woman were paid from an account almost entirely funded by my client. We submit complete evidence, invoices, bank statements, public security camera photos, and documentation from a licensed investigator. No exaggeration, no dramatization. The truth on its own was brutal enough." Nathan's young lawyer had almost nothing to counter. All the evidence was legal, clear, and irrefutable. The judge reviewed the file for 13 minutes, long enough to assess, short enough to know this wasn't a complex case. The Boston home was purchased before the marriage. Therefore, it remains the sole property of the plaintiff, Brooklyn Linwood. I squeezed my hands gently in my lap. Nathan bowed his head. The judge continued, "Regarding joint assets, based on financial contribution from both parties, the plaintiff is awarded 85%. The defendant has contributed little of significance." I looked at Nathan. His eyes held nothing but emptiness. The trial ended quickly, no arguments, no delays, no last-minute theatrics, just a legal, fair, and deserved conclusion. Nathan left the courtroom before I did. He walked out into the hallway like someone who'd lost all sense of direction. And maybe, the life he thought he could control. As for me, I walked out not with the feeling of victory, but with the quiet knowing that I had reclaimed the life I was entitled to all along. I stepped out of the Boston courthouse, and the sky had cleared. I thought I'd feel exhausted, but no. I only felt lighter, like someone had finally lifted the boulder that had weighed down my shoulders for years. I stood at the top of the courthouse steps, the wind brushing my face, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. But the story didn't end there, because people who live off image, like Jennifer, don't fall in silence. They fall in the spotlight, in the very glow they thought would protect them. It wasn't until 3 weeks after the trial that I saw the tide begin to shift. An anonymous TikTok account, the kind that exposes influencers, posted a compilation video from Jennifer and Nathan's Hawaii trip. No private moments, just clips of them entering the resort, checking in, laughing on Waikiki Beach. But that was enough. The internet took care of the rest. Comments poured in. Wasn't she supposed to be on a business trip? What about that old hotel video? Gold digger history returns. Very quickly, someone unearthed an old clip, the very video Ezekiel had once sent me, of the jewelry store manager's wife bursting into a hotel room and slapping Jennifer repeatedly. Blurry, shaky, but instantly recognizable. And the internet never forgets. 2 days later, Jennifer posted a video crying, claiming she was being slandered. But people had already seen too much. The first brand went live, announcing termination of her contract due to violation of brand ethics. Then the second brand, then the third. Within a week, she lost nearly all her sponsorship deals, the very thing that supported her luxury lifestyle for 1.5 million followers to see. Gyms around Boston followed with internal memos. No collaboration with influencers involved in recent scandals. Jennifer was denied filming access. Her TikTok engagement plummeted. Brands rejected her. Friends distanced themselves. Her income fell, month after month. Jennifer, once admired for her fit body and healthy lifestyle, now only appeared in short, low-quality videos. No makeup, tired eyes, trying to explain, trying to apologize, trying to hold on to something, but the image of a married man in Hawaii and that hotel video were too powerful for any apology to undo. She faded, month by month, like a lantern running out of oil. About a year later, I happened to hear from a nurse who had worked in New York. Jennifer had been seen wandering near the train station in Queens. No more influencer aura, no more skin-tight activewear, no more film crew, gym lights, or gifted outfits. Just a girl with a worn-out backpack, messy ponytail, surviving in cheap housing, sometimes sleeping at the station, the kind of people who once clung to the glamour of lights, only to be burned by it. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vengeance. I just saw one thing clearly. Life always collects its debts, exactly the way it should. And for Jennifer, that debt came from the very image she once used to build her world. This was a journey that, had someone told me about it years ago, I wouldn't have believed I had the strength to walk through. But in the end, I stood back up in my own way. Not with noise, not with revenge. Just by choosing truth, choosing freedom, and choosing myself. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt overlooked, erased, or left behind, then I hope it reminds you of this. You have the right to start over, the right to protect your worth, and the right to walk away from anything that causes you pain. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories of women reclaiming their voices, strength, and self-respect, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Because maybe, the next story is exactly what you need to take your next step.